you guys, Flickers of Fear time. Have kind of an interesting movie, kind of an interesting story behind how I ended up watching this one and reviewing it, because if you guys know, like if you've seen any of our other movie reviews, any of the movie reviews I've done, any of the movie reviews that I've done with Tom, and I think I've mentioned on several occasions that of all the horror subgenres, I'm not a massive fan of found footage type of movies. And that's not to say that, you know, there's not some found footage movies that I haven't really enjoyed. And mockumentaries, I tend to like mockumentaries more than found footage. But there have been some found footage ones that I've liked, although it's generally not, it's not a subgenre that I am like all that excited about. So like when a movie comes out that's kind of like, that's found footage, I'm always kind of like, meh, I'll get to it eventually maybe, like if a bunch of people have told me that it's good. So I kind of came at this film, this is the movie Unfriended. This came out in 2014. Now this is essentially, I guess you could call it a found footage movie. It was actually made entirely on a MacBook laptop screen. So the whole entire, all of the action takes place on a computer screen, which, as I said, I don't even think that was the first time, because I think there was a movie that came out called Open Windows. Wasn't Tobey Maguire in that, I want to say? That was kind of like a stalkery that was very much like had the same sort of thing, and it might have come out the same year. But this one kind of got a lot of play just because of the gimmick. And it, you know, and I hate to use that word because, yes, it's a gimmick that the entire movie is made on a laptop in real time, like during a Skype conversation, but it's just really interesting that this movie, I probably wouldn't have watched it because I just feel like, oh boy, a bunch of like teens like talking to each other like over Skype for 80 minutes or whatever it is, and it's like found footagey and they're all gonna like screech at each other and stuff, which they do, but I don't know. So this movie, it's on Netflix, and I was kind of like, I really hadn't much interest in watching it until I kept seeing it pop up like in a bunch of people's, hey, this movie was like kind of forgotten about, or hey, this movie is like way better than most people probably think it is, just given the premise. I also heard, I haven't seen the trailer for it, but I heard the trailer was like terrible, because I was reading like an article about it, like, you know, shortly after it came out, and the person reviewing it was kind of like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting, like I saw the trailer and I thought this was gonna suck out loud, but it's like, this is actually like way better than it had any right to be, and it's actually quite a good movie. So I feel like the trailer maybe did it a little bit of a disservice, even though, like I said, I haven't seen it, but this is just one of those ones that kept turning up on people's lists. It's like on these horror channels, there's like, oh, you know, I thought I was going to hate this movie, but then I watched it. It's actually really, really good and really creepy and really effective. And so I decided that, you know, why not? I'll just sit down and watch it. And hopefully, like I said, it's teens and it's all taking place on a computer screen, so hopefully it won't piss me off too much. And I have to agree with like most people, this was actually, it's not like a masterpiece, but this movie is like really effective, and it was like way, way better than I was expecting it to be. Now, I will say that in 2018, a sequel to this came out, which was called Unfriended Dark Web. I haven't seen that one, but I've heard that one is like really, really not as good. Because I think what they did with the sequel was that, I mean, and this will probably have like, you know, mild spoilers, I guess. So, you know, let's just know that going in. I kind of feel like Unfriended Dark Web, they went in a more stalker direction in the sense of, you know, this being a real, like a computer hacker that was like stalking them. Whereas the first movie went in a more supernatural direction. And in a way, even though the stalker situation is probably more realistic, I kind of felt like the supernatural angle was better and creepier, because you could, I mean, I saw another reviewer say this too, is that, you know, in some ways, having a supernatural aspect to this cyber stalker, essentially, it kind of papers over a lot of things. Because if you're willing to suspend your disbelief and say, okay, well, this is a ghost or a vengeful spirit doing this, then you don't get into the nitpicky shit of like, oh, well, a real life hacker can't do that, or a computer can't do that, or something like that. Because it's like, it's a ghost, they can do anything, it's supernatural. So in that way, I kind of feel like, you know, maybe having it be supernatural is like the better way to go. So I think that's probably why people responded like way better to the first one than it did to the second one. So this movie, as I said, came out in 2014. I think it premiered at Fantasia, and it actually did so well there, like, very, very positive, like, audience feedback, that it got picked up by Universal Pictures. Now, I think this movie only cost $1 million to make. They did spend a lot doing kind of a lot of online advertising and stuff, but it actually ended up making $65 million back. So quite a good investment for, somewhere probably not as much as like something like Paranormal Activity, but, along those same kind of lines where they made it for not much money and ended up like making a lot of it back, which, like I said, was why they ended up making a sequel to it. So what we have is these, like, a group of high school students. Now, a year prior to the events of the movie, a student named Laura Barnes committed suicide. Now, she did that after, I guess, her and a bunch of her friends, all of whom are participating in the Skype call that, comprises the entire movie. They were all at a party. She got really drunk and fell asleep or passed out and shit herself. And one of her friends, you don't know who until later, recorded it. And it ended up going online, going viral, and the girl, Laura, really couldn't ever live it down. Or she just went through, like, bullying because of the video, because everybody had seen it. And so she ended up committing suicide. So at the beginning of the movie, it's the year anniversary of the suicide, even though the friends don't really realize this at this point. Now, we start out with two characters, Blair and Mitch, and their boyfriend and girlfriend. And they're kind of starting out just on a Skype call, like, by themselves, kind of like doing little, like, showing her boobs and all this other kind of stuff, like, high school teenagers would do or whatever. And then at some point, all their other friends come onto the call. Their names are Jess, Ken, and Adam. Now, pretty much within the first few minutes of the film, when all of them come onto the Skype call and are just talking about shit that, like, teenagers normally talk about, they notice that there is an anonymous person in the Skype call with them. I will say, too, that I think one of the best things about this movie is that even though obviously it's, they made it on a computer and it's, like, edited together to look like, and it's so it looks like it happened in real time, and it's like, everything is real. Like, all the Skype stuff looks real, all the Facebook stuff looks real, all of the everything, like every window they open, that, they made it all look real, even though obviously they had to finagle it, like, to get what they needed to get. But I think that really adds to it because it seems completely and utterly realistic. This really seems like a bunch of teenagers, and they're on a Skype call, and they have, like, all these other tabs and windows open and stuff like that, and someone is fucking with them over the internet, and they can't figure out who it is. So this anonymous user turns up in Skype with the little blue box with the little white silhouette, and this person comes across, like, their screen name is just Billy227. Now, this user seems to be, at first, you're not really sure. Like, at first, they think it's just somebody that's, like, fucking with them. And when this user starts talking to them about Laura and about Laura's suicide and sort of holding them accountable for what happened to her, for, like, all the bullying that she endured after the video came out. So at first they're kind of thinking maybe this is a relative of Laura's, or maybe somebody hacked into her Facebook account, or maybe and knows things about us and is, like, using shit, against us. But as the movie goes on, it becomes clear that this is actually the vengeful spirit of Laura herself, and she has basically taken control of all their shit and can also reach out and do other things, as in she can almost like possess them into doing things to themselves. So it's almost kind of, so I really, really liked that aspect of it, because there really was this kind of sense of danger where, because it was supernatural, because it was a vengeful spirit, and she could essentially do anything, including like possessing somebody and making them do horrible, painful things to themselves. So it really gave that a sense of threat, and it also explained Why? Because I think when people first saw the trailer for this movie, they were just kind of like, ooh, you know, somebody's stalking over the internet, like just turn the computer off, like problem solved. But yeah, but and I do like that at some point, like in the movie, like the characters do say, hey, why don't we just like, let's kick them out of the Skype call, or why don't we unfriend Laura Barnes on there and she can't send us messages anymore, do that. So they do actually try to do all those things, but because this is a ghost or like a spirit or something, she can actually maneuver things so that you can't do it. And since she can reach out from beyond the grave, I guess, and make people do things to themselves if they don't do what she wants them to do, then you can't log on. I mean, she says many times during the film, like she's threatening them, you know, you can't leave if you log off, one of you's gonna die, and all this other kind of stuff. And so like as it goes on, she also uses a bunch of information because she's a ghost and she's omnipotent, she knows everything. So she knows all of this information and all these dirty little secrets that each of the friends has, and can use them to like turn everyone against each other. So at some point she's like revealing this kind of secret, she's revealing that. And then so it's not only just her being threatening, it's also all of the friends turning on one another because they're finding out some of their friends like had stabbed them in the back. Like, you know what I mean? You find out that Blair had slept with this other guy, like she had cheated on her boyfriend, and like you find out like who was the one who originally took the video, who was the one who released the video of Laura Barnes, and there's like other things going on behind the scenes too. So it's almost kind of like they try to work together to figure out at first like who this intruder is into their Skype call. Once they figure out that this is probably supernatural, then they almost like start to sort of cooperate, but also kind of like turn on each other and, you know, get into these big, huge arguments and stuff because they're finding out all these horrible things about what their friends have done behind their backs and all this other kind of stuff. So I really, really liked that aspect of it as well. Also, there's some pretty good deaths in this too, which you wouldn't think. And I really like, it's kind of effective the way, you know, they'll have something like, you know, like how on a real Skype call, like sometimes it like glitches out or like, you know, the picture freezes or the audio's out of sync and stuff like that. So they do that, not so much that it's annoying, but enough that it's like realistic. If anybody that's used Skype, and you'll recognize what that's like. But they also use that pretty effectively for some of the kind of jump scare type of things, or like some of the deaths, because as I said, since the ghost can essentially like come out of the screen, like possess a person to kill themselves or hurt themselves. So sometimes you have these really great sequences where one of the friends will, you know, their screen will like freeze up, or they'll hang up and they don't know where they are. And then like suddenly it'll come on and it'll be like this horrifying image, like, you know, one of the kids like sticking his arm in a blender and things like that. But you don't see it, like it's really well done, but you only see it for like a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds. So it's like, I think that's really good because it leaves a lot of it to your imagination, like, because sometimes you can just hear something, or sometimes you just see it for like a couple seconds and you're just like, oh man, that's fucked up, and it's like really fucked up imagery, but it doesn't linger on it. So it's like, it's, in a way, it kind of makes it creepier because it's, like I said, it leaves it to your imagination. So yeah, this was like, it's just funny because, as I said, I'm not a fan of found footage films. I'm not, and when I say, oh, it's like a bunch of teenagers talking over a Skype call for 80 minutes, you know, that sounds gimmicky and it sounds lame. And indeed, that's how I thought it sounded too. And that's why I'd never bothered watching it, because I did actually hear about it, because there was kind of a little bit of a buzz about it when it came out back in 2014. But, you know, like I said, I probably would never have watched it if I hadn't seen a bunch of other horror channels and like reviewers and stuff talking about, oh, give it a chance, because it's actually like way better than you would think. Like, it's better than its premise sounds like. And I actually would absolutely agree with that. I think this was it was just like a really tight, like I said, it's pretty short. I think it's only like 83 minutes. And it doesn't fuck around. There's not like a lot of extraneous crap. It seems like very, very well paced. You would think that just watching someone's laptop, you know, and them just kind of scrolling through the tabs and it's like, you know, searching Google for things, or, you know, just doing Facebook messages and stuff. You'd think that maybe that would be boring, or it would be like, you know, watching, like sitting behind your friend and like watching them fart around on the web or something. But it's really like oddly compelling. I'm not really sure how, I mean, because I was watching, Mark Kermode was talking about this, and I really like him, and he actually kind of said the same thing. He was like, this is like a really way more effective movie than it has any right being. And he's like, I'm not really sure how it would play for maybe like way older audiences, but for, you know, people that grew up with the internet, that grew up with this, all this type of shit, you know, younger audiences probably relate to it maybe a lot more than, and I'm kind of talking like more old kind of people would probably just not know what was going on. I mean, I found it really, I was never bored. I was never, and I really like too that they used actually the sort of setting of this girl, because it's all kind of from Blair's, because she's kind of the main character, I guess, if you want to say that, but it's all like Blair's laptop. So it's like there's a lot of stuff of, you know, just the tabs that she has, like, you know, the stuff that she says or starts to say when she's like typing Facebook messages and stuff like that. And so a lot of that stuff, it really like informs a lot of the character without them having to say anything outright, you know, anything outright. So I think that's really cool how they kind of used this format to give you information, because there's so much stuff going on, you know, in the other tabs that she has, you know, on her thing. And like, sometimes you can see some little things on her desktop and stuff like that. So it's like, it really gives you an idea of the character without them having to do a lot of exposition and stuff, which I thought was actually really clever. But yeah, so if you don't like found footage movies, or this sounds like the worst thing ever, then maybe you wouldn't like it. But I'm just saying that if it sounds like, if the premise sounds interesting to you, I think that this is definitely one that is maybe like a little bit underrated. And I'm not going to say, I don't want to recommend it to everybody, because some people might just think it was annoying or whatever, but it's like, I found this like way better than I was expecting. And I think a lot of other people did as well. So let me know if you've seen it. It's on Netflix. Like I said, I've heard the sequel is not good, but I can't really say because I haven't seen it. I've heard the buzz, like the sequel wasn't that great. And like I said, the sequel went more in a realistic stalker direction, more rather than the supernatural direction of the first one, which I think was probably a mistake, but whatever. But yeah, it's on Netflix, so check it out and let me know what you thought of it, if you loved it, if you hated it, or if you've already seen it. And again, did you think it was better than you thought it was going to be? Did you think it was worse than you thought it was going to be, or whatever? Just let me know down in the comments. And that will do it for this Flickers of Fear. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.